Right guys, Andy Work here. Now back on with the double strike build, or the double up as I'm calling it. Printed this one out, you might have seen it on the Facebook posts. It's pretty rough, but it was just there to give me an idea of fit and how everything went together and any issues I had. And the first issue was I had to actually Dremel these holes out because it printed a solid top. And so what I needed to find was, although I've Dremeled them out reasonably well, it's still very rough, and I wanted to find the perfect place to put those holes, but I didn't want to have to print out one of these every time, moving the holes every time. So what I came up with is this, which is an open top version, and allow me to separate the top and just print out separate tops. And the first one I printed out, I forgot to turn off do not fill the base layer, so I got a solid one. But eventually, after a while, printing them out and correcting them, moving one hole or the other, usually only a little bit, I finally got one that worked, which is, I've marked it here somewhere, probably one of the ones I've just dropped down. Yep, there it is. So that goes on there, that just clips in with those little tabs and just clips on. Fits nice. Now what I did then was, in the software I've gone in and put these two pieces together because I don't want it separate. I just wanted to be able to make it simple for myself. It saved me using a lot of filament, solved the problem. Now, speaking of problems, I've got my end done, ready to go. But there was this issue. As you can see, I push on the body and it wants to spring off. And after a lot of messing about, I came to the conclusion that it's this ridge here, just the top edge of this on both sides. So instead of altering this in the software, printing another one out, I ground off about 1/2 mm either side, just off the surface, put the original piece back on, and it still popped off. So I can't take any more plastic off that, so I had to print another one, and this is one I printed. It's a rough, low quality one, because it was just to solve these problems. Got my top all as one piece, got my top piece all in one, and what I did, I redesigned inside the back there. Just took out a couple of these supports there and sunk it in, and when you put this one on, clicks on, stays on. So I'm pretty happy with that. So as we speak, a PLA Plus version in dynamic quality is being printed, and we'll move on to the next part, which is opening this guy up and working out how to do the pistol grip extension, which I was in two minds whether to cut along this line and put it down, or along here somewhere and pull it down, because I'm pretty sure there's some sort of spring actuator going down the pistol grip. I'll see that when I open it up. It'll be easier to do it here from one point of view, like you could carve it across, copy that line if that went all the way around, which it does. Yeah. It's just these bandages are such a pain. But anyway, I'll open this up and I'll get back to you. Right, got this little fellow opened up, and yep, there's a pretty substantial anchor point there for the spring. It's just mounted on two pins moulded into the inside of the grip, and there's no corresponding thing fitting in the other side except, let's have a look. No, nothing. So pretty simple. It'd be easier to do it from that line as opposed from that line, because that line is going that way, whereas this line is going that way, in line with the pistol grip. So if I cut it there, which means that'll be a cut up here, I have to alter this. But that's pretty easy because I can just snip it off the pins, complete with the holder, and as I move it down, it'll find its own new place. These supports, which I'm assuming are stiffening supports, could be an issue. In fact, they probably will be an issue. I'm going to have to grind a bit out of each one of them. Right guys, got all the parts out of it, just the empty shell, so I'm going to use my trusty little X-Acto saw, just lean it up against that grey bandage and work my way around. The reason I put it back together is when you're cutting this, you don't want to cut two separate pieces because you might end up with a slight difference in your cut one side or the other. You don't want to start on one side and just go straight through. Yeah, lots of trouble. So just go around slowly, it'll eventually go through. And what it means is when I actually come to do the 3D modelling, I've got basically the same diameter piece for the top and the bottom, so even though they're 20 mil apart, there's not going to be that much in the way of spline lines and intersecting planes that are going to cause me no end of grief in the on the software side of things. So I'll just get this done and get back here. So also we've got a screw hole and a support and a pin here, which I will incorporate into this upper bit so we can still have that screw. And I could even incorporate the lower bit to go around these supports, because that's all they are. They're just supports for the pistol grip, so I could actually cut them out and make things a whole lot easier for me. So the next thing is how to work out what that shape is there and what that shape is there. Well, that's pretty easy. As you can see, guys, I did an awful lot of work on this thing, and it was at this point that I realised I was working too big. Somehow, right at the beginning, I made a huge mistake. So basically that's about, up to there is about a week and a half's work. So I've started again, and I got to the point where it's like this. Really pretty, all over the place. There's so many different pieces in there, and so many so that I think Cura's having trouble discerning them, and it's leaving the occasional one out sometimes. So I'm starting again from scratch to get this right, and I think I've got it straight in my mind what I'm doing this time. So let's go. So the next thing is how to work out what that shape is there and what that shape is there. Well, that's got a little bit of graph paper for one of my old builds. What I'm going to try first is just by putting it on the graph paper and drawing around it. See how well that works. Now, I know it's not exact, it doesn't have to be, but I've got a rough idea there. So, and what I'll do, I'll apply the same process, hang on, I'll just mark what that is, top. The same process to get this shape here as I did to get the profile for the shroud going around the front of the gun. So I'll roughly print myself a bit, see if it fits, adjust it, bring it back in, and once I've got one that matches that and one that matches that, I can put them into software, and I'll have like a top ring and a bottom ring, and I'll just build a structure between them, trace the bottom. Now I can see the bottom a bit better here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the center line of the bottom on this, one of the big heavy center lines on the graph paper. Well, the trick with, well, the thing I do, I don't know if it's a trick, the thing I do in SketchUp is I draw one half of the model, then just copy it, drag it and flip it the opposite direction. So there's my little double strike pistol grip cut off, and I've sanded the surface slightly flat with a bit of wet and dry in a circular motion. Don't go back and forwards because you'll wear down one side, so just a gentle circular motion just to take the burr off. So to get a rough idea, you normally hold it like that, and that's up there and it's too small, so I need to be able to get my little pinky in, so about like that. So at the top edge it's about 20, and at the bottom edge it's about 20, so it's not, so I could do a piece there's maybe 19 at the front and 20 there, just to give it a tiny little bit of rake, not much at all, because with angles and things you make a tiny little bit of angle at one place, a little space there, you get a lot of movement down here. So I've cut off the pistol grip because I am going to do a better one. Now I started by mapping these holes and printing little bits that fitted them so I can just get where the holes are, worked it out. As you can see, that one doesn't quite fit. So I printed it out till I actually got one that fitted, then I actually added a pistol grip, printed it out, and yeah, fits great, but way too long, way too big. So I shortened it, but I don't know what I did. I shortened it wrong. That's way too small. That's smaller than the original. So had a mistake and then got one right. So that goes on there, that goes on there, slides all the way down. Been having a lot of trouble getting this base sorted. This is the insert that the pistol grip will be built off, and just by chance when I was looking at number 13 that still didn't fit, I actually happened to hold them like that next to each other, and that's just not right. So I did a lot more careful measuring, and that's the size we're looking for. I've also done about 10 or 12 of those, only changing one thing at a time, just going step by step, being very methodical about it, which is really unlike me. But stuffing up and getting the wrong measurements is very like me. So I figured it all balances out in the end. Now what I want to do, I actually want to get an impression of the inside of that just to compare it to the next one I printed out. So I've got some plasticine out, made it nice and warm by rubbing it in my hands. Going to put it in here. Close the other side of the pistol body over it. I'm not really worried about plasticine getting in screw holes and things. And I'm actually going to screw it shut so I can get a good idea, a really good idea of exactly what that shape is in there, and then I can actually compare it to the shapes I'm printing. If I just pull this open and pull that piece of plasticine out now, it's going to deform because it's soft. So what I'm going to do is shove it in the freezer for about an hour. Plasticine is oil-based, so it's not like it's going to freeze and shatter or anything like that. It'll just get very, very hard, and it'll give me time to work with it. I'm just trimming the bottom off there so I can accurately see what's happening. I'm going to bit of a gap in there, so I'm going to just shove some more in. In an hour's time, we'll pull that apart, and I'll be able to get a good impression of what the shape is in there, and I'll be able to alter these. Alright guys, here we are, an hour later. This is fresh out of the freezer, nice and chilly. Plasticine's reasonably stiff. Alright, I'm going to pull this apart. Oh, don't fall apart on me. Please don't tear it. There we go. So, there we have a nice solid lump of plasticine. I'm wondering if it's the top sides here pushing on either side, because if I compare that to this, okay, there's an indentation there from a moulding on the inside, which means there needs to be a corresponding indentation where that moulding can fit in, or I have to grind that moulding off, but I believe that's a little detail piece on the outside. So decisions. So by holding them side by side, I can actually see now that screw goes through there. That moulding is something like just around that area there. So I'd need to make an indentation in that area to accommodate that moulding, and that goes for the same for both sides. So if I put that there, and the moulding's about there like that. Just ground out that and ground off that corner there. Fitted really well, so I did the same thing other side. I'm just going to quickly grind those two and we should have a perfect fit. Okay, let's see this click together. We are sorted. We are happy. We are handiwork. See you next time, guys.